Hello.
Hi,
Hi,
how's it going?
everybody. We're live. I'm still live like a minute earlier than I meant to. But we have Alexine joining us today. I'm just gonna grab this link over here and put it in my event for this event. And just hold on a second here. Here we go. Copy link. LinkedIn really has to up their game with these events so that they go right to where they're supposed to be.
But I don't think I've done very many LinkedIn lives. I think this is like maybe my first or second. So, and then I have the Dooley one tomorrow, which is terrifying. So,
yes, that's exciting though. I've watched a couple of those. They look kind of painful. Are you scared?
I'm a little scared, although I didn't get the memo that we were just like tasting this hot sauce called Da Bomb. So I ate an entire spoonful because I thought we did a promo reel and then we were going to mush it all together. So I took the whole spoonful and then I watched everyone else's later and they were eating out on like a toothpick. And I was like, nobody told me. So.
Well, isn't that the way it is? Oh, we've got Lydia joining us from San Francisco. That's amazing. You know what? I'm going to drop this link to your event for the Fire Talk in our LinkedIn live stream in case anyone wants to join you for that. If you haven't seen one of these Fire Talks, basically what happens is they make them eat hot sauce while asking them really useful sales questions. And it's kind of hilarious. I saw the one with Dale Dupree and Sahil, and it was really funny. And what really made me laugh was, those other people kind of hopping in occasionally who aren't eating the hot sauce, but that like gets to laugh at you. Like, I want to be one of those people.
Yeah.
Like, how do you sign up for one of the people who like kind of drops in and just says, hey, I'm not eating hot sauce, right?
Yeah.
So we've got some people. If you are watching this live, we really appreciate you. But if you're coming in after the fact, if you want to put hashtag team replay, would really appreciate that. Trying to get an idea of how many people watch it, like when it's going on versus like after the fact. That last episode with Catherine, it looked like we had like 700 views, like unique views, right? But most of them seem to happen like after the fact. So trying to track that. Oh, and there is Catherine now.
Hi, Catherine.
And we've got Ginger.
Oh, such a good crew.
Yeah, and Teresa's here. Janet from Michigan. So we've got a lot of people. Oh, we even have Mark.
Hey, Mark.
And Gil. So we've got a lot of people joining us. So we should probably get to it, right?
Yeah.
So I'm so happy that you've decided to join me and share this story. So why don't you tell everyone about yourself for those folks who don't know you? Though it's hard to believe because you're like everywhere lately.
I think just the hot sauce thing has taken over my LinkedIn feed. But for those who I haven't had the pleasure of meeting yet, my name is Alexine Mudawar. I have spent the past 7+ years as an account executive, field sales manager, SDR manager, and currently a major account executive, all running full cycle sales, working mostly with tech startups based here in Chicago. So had a successful career run so far. It's been a lot of fun, and I'm a prospecting maven. I love talking prospecting tips and strategies. So that's, if we do run across each other, it's usually us talking about cold prospecting. But I'm also very passionate about diversity and inclusion and have founded 2 women-focused employee resource groups. So Women in Sales Month is really important to me, and this discussion is important. So I'm excited for this all to come together.
That's great. And I so appreciate everything you do for women in sales. You do a lot of the webinars and speak about it often. And having as many people out there kind of creating that awareness is really amazing, because, that's how we'll get up to the next level and get more women interested in sales, is really by speaking our truth and sharing all of the amazing and not so amazing stories about it, right?
Yeah.
So you have a story of something that happened while you were prospecting or with the customer. You go ahead and share.
Yeah, absolutely. So this is kind of the story that launched this conversation with Jen and I. So this is years ago. I was actually in my earlier 20s. So let's pretend like I'm still in my early 20s. But I was actually it was some kind of happy hour get together with my company, and it was right around the time that I closed on my first condo, and it was really important time for me because it was something I was really proud of, and it was my biggest accomplishment to date. So I actually was talking. We had a new executive at the time, and I hadn't met him before. But we got into a conversation, and you typically ask when you live in Chicago, you typically ask like, "What neighborhood are you in? What neighborhood are you in?" So I mentioned what neighborhood I'm in, and I was like, "I just moved there," and he was like, "Oh, that's great. Are you guys like renting? Did you buy?" So of course I'm like, "Oh, I actually bought." And he's like, "Oh, congratulations, you and your husband." And I was like, "No, I'm not married." And then he was like, "Oh, okay." And I was like, and then we got deeper into it. And he was like, "Well, what type of is it? Like a duplex?" And I was like, "I bought a 2-story, 3-bedroom place." And he was like, "Well, okay, so it's you and roommates, or you and your boyfriend?" And so I was still kind of like stuck. Like, I was like, why does he keep asking these questions? Like, what is he talking about? And then it was really funny because one of my other C-levels at the time, and I had 2 C-levels that were really mentors to me. So I had a really unique relationship, but one of my C-levels at the time, not even making eye contact with either of us, with like a whiskey in his hand, walks through the middle of our conversation, doesn't look at either of us. And he just goes, he goes, "She's our top salesperson." And he's like, "She makes more than most of the executive team," and just kept walking. Didn't even stop for a second. But it was this like moment where I was like, what he said. And then I was like, "Nice speaking with you. Have a great rest of the event. I'll talk to you later." And we never really spoke again after that. And it was just such an interesting moment because it was one of the first times where I had this accomplishment I was so proud of. And I was, ready to talk about it because you get excited when you have something like that happen. But the line of questioning was like so bizarre to me because I was like, where are these questions coming from? Like, what does this mean? And it took me like a little bit to kind of process and realize that he didn't think that I was able to make that decision on my own. And another big piece of this puzzle too that I always like to mention is at the time I was very adamant about not having to co-sign on my condo. It was like a non-negotiable. And my dad at the time, he was like, "I'll co-sign with you. You can buy whatever, then you can have more flexibility because you only have, when you're in your early 20s, you only have so many years of like pay stubs that you can show to the bank to get, all these different processes you have to go through." And I told my dad, "No, absolutely not. I'm not co-signing with you." And he was like, "But you could probably get something, even a step up." And I was like, "Absolutely not. That's like a line in the sand for me." So I ended up not co-signing, and I was within $10,000 where I would have had to co-sign. So I was like trying to weasel my way down with this, with the place that I ended up closing on. But it was just such an interesting experience. And I think it kind of helps set the stage for our conversation today too.
Yeah. So in that moment when you realized that executive was sort of questioning, how it is that this happens, right?
Mm-hmm.
How did that make you feel?
It's like icky. Like, what did why are you asking like what man was involved in this decision? Because this was something that I did on my own. So I think you just feel like, man, really discouraged. But at the same time, like on some level, very empowered too. Because I was like, you know what, I did close on my own. And so, it was one of those moments where at the time I didn't really like answer that line of questioning properly because I was still just like digesting. Whereas like now, if someone would ask me that question, I would like giggle about it and it would be funny. So it's just such an interesting like juxtaposition of today versus then.
Yeah, no, and I totally get it. I got my first home before I was married as well.
Mm-hmm.
I got a condo. And it's funny, the way life turned out. I ended up moving back into that condo like later in life to try to be a stay-at-home mom, right?
Mm-hmm.
So I brought my whole family, my husband back to that condo. And, there were all these assumptions that, this is what I should have. I should have, like, if I'm going to be married, right, that I should have this dream house. But when you think about your finances and what's best for you, it's like, I can have whatever I want. And it's, all these stereotypes that, make you believe that it's something different. So
Yeah.
tell me, when I was doing some research for this, I was looking at all of the different stereotypes, because that idea
Mm-hmm.
that women, may not have a home that they bought on their own, that's really sort of a stereotype, right?
Yeah.
And thinking that, it's been since what, 1862, since women had the right to own their own home and own property.
Uh,
By now, that stereotype should be gone, but there are lots of other stereotypes, like the idea of the ice queen versus being an emotional person.
mm-hmm.
That if you're single, you're supposed to be lonely. Tell me
Mm-hmm.
what you think about some of these stereotypes.
Yeah. So, I think I'm a little bit of a unique breed. I had like a very different, I talked about this recently for the first time on an event. But I'm an only child. And I think my dad, he will never admit, if his life depended on it, that he wanted a son, but I think he probably wanted a son. So he got a daughter. So I grew up like he would take me to Taekwondo classes. I had to get my black belt before I could drive. So I had like a very weird, I would say, childhood. And like every Christmas, he would buy me like really nice toolkits, which was really sweet. But it was like, I don't want a toolkit. So it's, so I think I grew up I was lucky to grow up in a home where it was very important for like my family to, raise me in the sense that like, you're not any different than anyone else. And you will get places on your own efforts and your own hard work. And my mom's a female entrepreneur as well. So it's like, I had like a very, I guess, different upbringing, but I think some of the stereotypes, which, this, but I'm usually one of two of the women on every sales team I've been on, or sometimes there's like a couple more, and that's always exciting. But a lot of times the stereotypes revolve around like women, people sensing that we won't be as aggressive or assertive. And then it's like a double-edged sword, because if you are aggressive and assertive, then you're the ice queen or the B word. So it's like, where do you can't really win on that one in people's eyes. So I think there's assumptions like that. There's also assumptions that you will be like overly nurturing. I think there's a lot of these like maternal in areas that carry over into the workplace, which is so interesting too, because, for me, I am probably closer to a lot of those male attributes that many male sellers exude. So it's such like an interesting juxtaposition when I think about it. But I think a lot of assumptions when you come into the team, it's like, oh, there's the girl on the team, and like she's gonna, hopefully like smile her way through some deals. And then, when it gets time to actually prospect and close, like that's where I just come into my element. So it's taken me a really long time to get to the point where I can just come to an organization and start just picking up the phone and landing deals, and then just not worried about what other people think about me. But usually a lot of those perceptions within like a couple minutes of conversation will float away very quickly, but they're still there. I mean, those biases, those even unconscious biases are always on the back burner.
No, and I've experienced it as well, being the only woman on a sales team, and that perception that you're supposed to be one way, or that you're likely to be one way, as opposed to who you are.
Mm-hmm.
And I found that, the sooner that you learn to embrace who you are and just be yourself and kind of not care as much what people think, the more likely you are to just rise above all of it. That's my personal experience. So let's look here at some of the comments. We've got Catherine, assumptions,
yes.
Then continued assumptions, which is true. It's
yes,
it's kind of an ongoing thing. Lydia, because he is a misogynist. Well, yeah.
Well, the funny thing is, okay, so here's the interesting thing about that story too, which I definitely have never shared. So then, it comes time to actually move into this condo, and I meet one of the folks that lives in the neighborhood around me, and it was actually female. And so I was like, oh, cool, like woman, powerhood, like, whatever. That's like where my mind was. And the first question she asked, she's like, single or married? And I was like, what the hell? And so it was just this whole like circle of all these different things that happened around that time, where there's all this excitement, but it really wasn't necessarily just perceptions from, it was really from everyone. So it was so interesting. And I think half of it was gender, but then the other half was age at the time too, because I think that was so hard for people to comprehend. And so the assumption was like, where'd you get the money? Like, who gave you the money? And so there's just that underlying piece too. And so I think, now if I say I own my own condo, like now it's like I don't really get as much of that type of like feedback anymore. But even my boyfriend lives with me now, and like he's my subletter, whatever you call it. So it's so funny because people will be like, "Oh, you and your boyfriend bought the condo." I'm like, "No, we did not. I bought the condo, and he has now moved in with me." So it's so funny to like that piece about continued assumptions. I mean, that's spot on.
Yeah, no, and I've experienced that as well. So we've got right, the assumption should have no bearing on what we know and believe is the best. That is very true.
Mm-hmm.
Let's see, my neighbors made assumptions. My parents were buying the house. That's true. I've had that as well. My condo association was convinced that, let's see. Catherine says, no, not weird, just not entrenched in gender bias. So, yeah, I mean, a lot of interesting comments here. Your feed keeps, okay, well, that's good to know, Lydia. Maybe I will get rid of the scroll next time. It's a bummer it doesn't work. Okay. Yeah, so the feed is working for me. Okay.
That's good.
That's good to hear. So lots going on with women in sales this month. So when you are going to all of these events and all of the things going on, right?
Yeah.
Tell me, what do you like most about being a speaker who talks typically about women in sales? Give me some insight into that and your why.
Yeah, I think for me, I want to be who I wish I had a few years ago when I was starting out in the industry, like 7 years ago. Because I remember we had a female sales consultant that worked with my company, and this was like 5+ years ago. And I remember she was like my hero. I didn't even really spend that much time with her, but it was just the fact that there was like a female in sales that was like really fierce and like setting the pace, and it was just so interesting to me. So I think part of like what the center of this is it's important for me to give an example to other women in this industry. I think we definitely, we all know the statistics around it. Like we have an issue not only bringing women into this as a profession, but then keeping them here is the other piece that we really have a hard time with. So we have kind of like two issues that we're trying to deal with simultaneously. So for me, I want to show that I'm someone that's been in this. I've stayed in this profession. I'm excited about it. Here's the good stuff. Here's some of the tough stuff that's going to be tough, and you'll power through it. But like the amount of like financial freedom you can get, the amount of ability to connect with, business leaders for some of the top 100 companies in the world. I mean, those are experiences for me that are really exciting that a lot of friends and other, that have chosen other professions will never get to talk to C-levels at Fortune 100 companies. So it's just, for me, it's really exciting. And so I want to share that excitement. And at the same time, I think, one of the other issues that nobody really likes to talk about, but it's, about this. I mean, there is a lot of competitiveness between women in this industry. And a lot of it has been brought about by, unfortunately, leadership kind of pitting sometimes women against each other to get stronger results. The sad thing is it works really well because women turn to be very competitive against each other. But I want us to get to a place where, we don't see another woman on the team as a threat. We see her as someone else that's in the same role as me, probably facing the same challenges as me. And we can kind of like keep each other like on our toes and like help encourage each other. But at the same time, like be focused on our own performance, because I can't tell you the number of times I've been told like, oh, don't you want to be the top girl on the team? And I'm like, there's only 2 of us. Like, what do you mean? And then there's like 15 guys on the team. So what does it matter if we're going to be like 14th and 15th on the team then? So it doesn't even matter. So I think that that's part of this too, is like how, like trying to bridge this community. And I think that's what groups like Rev Genius and some of these different communities that are emerging are doing a really good job of, is actually connecting women in this field together in a very like neutral place where we're just sharing learnings and discussions. So that's kind of all that gets me excited. That was a lot.
Yeah, no, but that's awesome. When you think about women in sales and women empowering women, right? There's a lot of people out there, right, who have a tendency to bring others down.
Mm-hmm.
And we see it. I see it. I'm sure
Yeah.
you see it, right? So how do we empower each other and really be in it together? And is it that perception that there's only one seat at the table for a woman? Or is it the perception that we need to elevate each other so that we're making room for all the other women, right? And, you know, it makes me wonder where that really comes from. And I think it really comes from the patriarchy, where, you know, there was only seat for one, and leadership only gave, like, it was a demographic thing, you know, one woman, and that's all you had. So, you know, getting past that, what do you suggest is a way to get past it, besides, you know, the communities and besides the speaking? Like, what action steps would you suggest?
Yeah. So I think like the only way through something is to face it head on. Like if I feel myself getting nervous or anxious about something, I run at it. And that's why, like, with speaking, public speaking for the longest time has been my Achilles heel. And it's so funny because I tell people that and they're like, you do stuff. Why do you do stuff all the time then? And it's like, because it scares the shit out of me. So I do it so that I can not be scared of it. So that's really, so I think with this whole idea of women kind of competing against each other, when you get, which you will, that innate sense of, you come to a new company, for instance, you see there's only one other girl on your team, and you like do that moment where you like size each other up, rather than letting that like stew and blow up into something and turn into this angry, like, you know, me versus you thing. Ask her to lunch. Like, let's go grab lunch. There's only two of us on the team. Like, let's get to know each other. And that's, you know, one of my good friends now, she actually was the only other girl on my team. And I joked about this on another seminar, that we like both had blonde hair. And I don't know if there's like a blonde hair thing, but it's like this little like Mortal Kombat moment that happens every time we're like around each other. So anyways, I started on this team. I was brand new. I didn't know really anyone. There was only one other girl on the team. And we had that Mortal Kombat eye lock for maybe 15 seconds. And then she goes, do you want to go get lunch today? And like, I'd love to hear your story and like learn about where you came from. And I was like, hell yes. And I would love to learn your story and hear about where you came from and like talk about what challenges. And we ended up being huge allies for each other and like rooting for each other, helping each other on deals. And it was just a completely different level. And then it made me feel kind of guilty then afterwards, because I was like, man, could this have been the last, you know, 5 years? Could I have just been doing this same thing rather than us like coming at each other's throats? Because once I started talking to more women in this field, you know, suddenly I realized like we're facing the exact same conversations, the exact same challenges. You know, we're those same conversations about money, the same conversations about promotions, the same, you know, the same issues internally. And so I think it's just so interesting. Like, I think the best way over is through. So if you start to feel that like bubbling up inside of you, or you start to have that Mortal Kombat moment, you just press pause and get to know the other person. And if they're still like really mean or horrible after that, that's, you know, you cross that bridge later. But most of the time, it's just, I think there's something animalistic about it, where we, you know, in nature, if we saw one of our kind, it's, you know, we would like, you know, fight each other for dominance. So I think there's some kind of like layer of that in there. But when you feel that coming up, then you just kind of face it head on and get to know the person and just peel back the layers a little bit. And you don't have to be like, I think the other misconception here too is that if we're both women in sales, if we're not going to be enemies, we have to be best friends. Like, you don't have to be either of those things. You can be somewhere in the middle with people. Like, I'm not going to become best friends with really anyone at work, and that's okay. But I think that, you know, we can get to a place where we're just getting along, or we root for each other on deals. Like, that's not like a best friend thing. That's just a colleague thing. So
yeah, I think that's amazing. And I think those are really good tips. I think also, if you seek to understand, like, why does someone put up that Mortal Kombat, like, you know, like if you try to understand and get to know someone, I think you can get past some of that just by building that human to human connection, right? Yes. We're all human, and we're all in sales competitive, right? But you don't have to be competitive in a way where you're competing against everyone. You can just compete against yourself and, you know, be part of a team. So we do have some more comments here. Kristen's buying her own house. That's amazing. Gerline says, did purchasing your condo independently add to your confidence as a seller?
Ooh, that's a really good question. Yeah, I think maybe not even as a seller, just as a person. It's funny. So my old office, if anybody's familiar with Chicago, it's next to Chicago Cut Steakhouse. And so whenever we would like hit sales quota or do something really well in my first sales role, they would take us to Chicago Cut. And so after I closed on my house, there was like this weird tradition where I would go to Chicago Cut by myself and have lunch constantly. And the reason was because there were not really that many women in there. And so I ended up like befriending a bunch of the staff there, and they would like, always take really, really good care of me. And she's since left, but there was like a lady that was, I don't know, she was like some type of management there. And she would always tell me, she's like, it's just so exciting to like, she's like, I just love that there's like a girl that shows up every week and has her little lunch by the window. And that's cool. Like, it was just cool. So I think it gave me this confidence to kind of own who I am and, just like level up my own understanding of myself and my own self-respect. So I think I just stopped, I learned to say no a little bit more. It helped me just confidence in general. I don't even know if it was specific to being a seller, just I think across the board.
Yeah, no, I would agree with that. When I got my first home, that it was a confidence boost.
Yes.
Just like I think anytime that you kind of step up and do something that's like you see yourself as like sort of that next level, you gain just a little bit more confidence, a little bit peace more, right? And as things go on, same with public speaking. The more you do it, the more comfortable you're doing it. Every LinkedIn Live show, I feel a little bit more comfortable, where I think I'm on like my 5th episode here. So
you're pro now.
Yeah. So, okay. And we've got something from Catherine here. Recruit and retain women. What examples can you share of companies or leaders who are doing these things well? I think Outreach is doing an amazing job with women. They've got their Gals and Sals, which is a women organization within their company. And I think they're at like 50% women over there.
Wow.
Do you know of any companies that are doing particularly well in this area?
So I can't like none that come to, not to say that there aren't ones that are, none come to mind, and I don't want to misspeak. What I will say is, for me, kind of on the flip side of this question, for the, where situations where I felt like we had a lot less women than men, or situations where I thought the company it would add value to add one of these employee resource groups, that's where I stepped in and just self-created that. And I think that that's something really important too, is like these employee resource groups are so valuable. And I know I'm not like totally, I'm like being a politician about this question, but I think the interesting thing about those is the toughest part is kind of getting everyone involved in the conversation. And I think if we were able to kind of bring in the right people into those groups, I think you have the talent internally that can launch some of those. I think it's just trying to get the right seats, people in seats at the table to actually listen and take that information in. But I think the companies that are doing a really good job are ones that, not just are using like those types of groups for like recognition and to use it on social, but ones that genuinely are having leadership sit in on those meetings and take information back from them and say, like, here's a theme that's come up a bunch. Like the women at this company do not feel like they have pathways to promotions, and they feel like they're getting passed over by several, male colleagues. Is this something we should explore as a leadership team? And like, so I think, that would be really impressive to me as like a forward thinking thing. I know it's, maybe that's just a dream, but I think that type of process would be really helpful, because those are your, you get kind of insight into through these groups what the kind of challenges that women are facing on your different teams. And it's not just sales, it's like CS, it's engineering, it's product. So we don't even all like really overlap necessarily a lot of times. So it's just interesting to kind of peel back the layers. So I'll be interested to see how those impact things in the next few years.
I definitely hear you on that. I know there are some organizations that actually report on this type of stuff. So I'm a VIP expert for Fairy Godboss, who has a rating system for organizations and how they support women in diversity. Additionally, Girls Club does, they're right now doing a survey on like the top, companies that are supporting women. And then there's the National Association of Women Sales Professionals, where they also publish jobs. So we've got some other comments here. So seek to understand is golden. That's awesome. Curiosity wins every single time. 100% agree. I love having lunch alone.
Me too.
Yeah, I do too. Like just kind of going someplace and, listen to my tunes and eating my lunch and,
decompress. I always talk to wine. Yeah, no wine for me. But my favorite is I always end up getting to know people at restaurants and then like forming relationships that way. It's just, I don't know. I'm one of those people where if you leave me in like a room, I'll just start talking to the walls or go meet all the, the building staff or whoever. That's just kind of my personality. So that's part of the reason I like going out to eat alone is a lot of times I either get into conversations with staff members or people at other tables. Like I go to the Ralph Lauren restaurant that's here in Michigan, like a decent amount, like pre-COVID. But I've gone there so many times where I end up sitting next to like people with the craziest life stories and I just start having conversations. So it's just amazing the way you can connect with people through those. So that's part of the reason I do that too.
Yeah, that's awesome. And Catherine says a how-to on setting up an ERG would be very valuable.
Okay.
So we'll have to maybe, because we're just about out of time today, we can always come back and have an episode on that alone.
Oh, yeah.
We're just about at the end of our time. So you have some events coming up. Would you want to take a second and tell us about those? We spoke a little bit about the fire talk.
Yeah, I'm scared of the fire talk, but I encourage all of you to go. I'm a little nervous. I think the last time I checked, we had like 450 registered, which is terrifying. But yeah, that fire talk, we're going to be trying hot sauces, answering sales questions. Gauntlet. I don't even know what a gauntlet is. I assume it's like we tap out after we've had too much hot sauce. So that's coming up. I'm going to be back with Aspireship in the next couple of weeks, teaching with them again, doing a women in sales event. American Association of Inside Sales Professionals. They're having a spotlight for their superstar, I don't remember the exact term, superstar women in sales. That was supposed to be like a small local event. It has turned into a global summit, which was a really cool thing. So that's going to be coming up next month. And then, those are kind of like the main ones on my horizon. And then we're doing some ancillary events through Rev Genius as well. So I know I have one coming up that's actually interesting where I'm going to be talking to a couple of our male Rev Genius members about allyship for women in sales to kind of wrap up Women in Sales Month. And then we have our happy hour too. So I'm looking forward to that.
At the end of the month, we're doing a happy hour, and I'm doing a happy hour tomorrow night for the moms out there, for Mom Life, talking about how to balance it all, the real life stories, on some mom talk. So I'm pretty excited about that. So earlier, what time is the fire talk?
It's at is it 3:30 Central Time? I'm on Central Time, so I'm all off. It's either 3:30 or 4 my time. So then I think it's Eastern. It's supposed to be like 5 p.m. Eastern.
So there's that. And then a couple hours later, we've got some mom talk. So both events promise to be a lot of fun. And I'm definitely going to tune in for the fire talk because some of my favorite ladies are going to be trying that hot sauce. And I can't wait to see them answer questions with all the hot sauce in your mouth. But thank you so much for joining me. Everybody, thank you so much for joining in the conversation and asking amazing questions. And we'll see you next week. Next week, I've got Erin Bell, and we're going to be talking about learning and growth. So that's pretty amazing. All right. Take care.
Thanks, everyone. Nice talking to you.